A very good afternoon to all the viewers. A very good afternoon to the Vice Chairman of the committee, Dayanivas Sharma ji, and to my two guests, Sanjeev Deshpande ji and Ramanathan ji. A very good afternoon to you. I am CA Manu Agarwal, the Chairman of Digital Accounting and Assurance Board, and welcome all the viewers in this seminar on SAP. We are very pleased to have attendance from various countries. We have delegates who are attending from 5 or 6 countries. So a good day to all of you. Somewhere it may be good morning, somewhere it may be good afternoon. So I'll just say a good day to all of you. We at the Digital Accounting Assurance Board have geared up to bring to you various programs, various courses, and in this series where we are doing this webinar on SAP. SAP basically stands for Systems, Applications and Products in Data Processing. It was basically a system which was founded in 1972 in Germany, and it is basically a set of computerized applications which is designed to provide an end-to-end solution to enterprises. It basically, as per the data available, it is being used in probably 9 out of 10 of all the Fortune 500 companies. This is the type of reach and type of basically usage which this application has. Today, we have experts who will tell you about the nitty-gritties of SAP, and they will try to focus upon the opportunities which chartered accountants have in this field by learning this program. It would be opportunities for members in industry who are using this, can enhance the usage, and it would be an opportunity for members in practice to probably implement it, to probably understand it, and also do a comprehensive audit around the organizations where this system is prevalent. In the Digital Accounting and Assurance Board, I'm pleased to announce that we have been launching various small modules of and workshops relating to advanced Excel, Power BI, refresher courses on DISA, and utility workshops which have got a huge viewership. Apart from that, our forensic audit course is also one of the areas in which we have trained more than 1,200 members during this COVID period itself. We have on 1st of July launched the revamped DISA in the form of DISA 3.0. It is basically a state-of-the-art course in which the members would be able to do a system audit. Those who have done the old DISA may feel that they are a bit deprived, but for that, we will be holding regular workshops and regular refresher courses where the new additions would be taught to the members. And we've been able to get permission to launch this online. So in July itself, we will probably be launching the first batch of DISA 3.0, which was a long-standing demand of all the members. Well, with this, I would not take much of your time and wish that this seminar really helps you learn about SAP, and hand it over to the very able Vice Chairman of the committee who's been working hard. And I would like to share with you that especially this SAP project was one thing which was very close to the heart of Dayanivas Sharma ji, and he took it on himself and said, I am determined to do the first first series of webinars. We are planning, once this is successful, members give good feedback, we will probably be launching 3-day or 4-day small sessions on SAP, so you could get a complete hang of the system. So over to Dayaji.
Thank you, Chairman. It's indeed kind of you that, you gave the credit to me, but I think the way you are involved in the technological, development of the institute and other activities, individually in individual capacity as well as individually in institute capacity, the way you have been doing is something fabulous. You stated one fact is it is an end-to-end solution, but I think it is the beginning of learning of SAP, which we are doing today of this particular session. Friends, it's indeed a pleasure to have sharing this screen with Manu Agarwalji, who is the chairman of Digital Accounting and Assurance Board. I'm really elated to be part of his team and being a vice chairman of his committee. And with us, we have Sanjeev, who is the CEO of Intelligence, which is basically the entity global data. He is the heading the entire India Middle East operation. He is there with us. He is fortunate. We are fortunate that in a short time he agreed to come and just give an open address to all of us for a couple of minutes, which is going to be a real good insight. He's a fantastic speaker on the national and international forums. And then Ramnathan. Ramnathan is again a chartered accountant. That is the best part about him. And a person who can understand very effectively what things are, how things are. He has gone, I think, from the beginning of a pipe to the end of pipe. He has gone to the entire process where the diversions are happening, what are the things happening. The SAP as a tool, when you talk about the mechanism which is there, the wired or unwired mechanism, that technology, the 1001 numbers which are playing around behind the system. When a chartered accountant is going to talk about that 1001 in our mathematics and our calculations, I think it will make a whole lot of difference. When you talk about robotic process automation, it was rightly been said, robotic and automation is part of an engineer, which is no other person than Sanjeev. But the process is the ownership of chartered accountants every time. The more effective the processes are designed, the more effective the systems will become. And I think the kind of output we are going to get after that is an example like SAP, which has grown multifold on the national and international forums. And today we are getting this course of or this session on SAP is not from any other point of view. I think we have been looking into multiple factors at the professional forum when you talk about a person from industry or a person from practice. For both, SAP has become one of the most critical and important factor. But the beauty is many people have not understood that SAP as a profession can also be considered when you talk about as a practicing chartered account. When Manu sir was talking about ISA, primarily Information Systems Audit, which is one of his again a pet project which he made 3.0 active, and we have released that on the CA day. That itself is the biggest achievement for Digital Accounting and Assurance Board. When you are talking about ISA as such, it is systems audit. When you talk about system audit, when you are talking about SAP, I think the larger organization, there are different kind of challenges which are there when you talk about the people which are required to manage certain things. Now the problem is when you talk one side, it is technology people, and second side, I think, is chartered accountants. Technology people are understanding accounting. I think it is high time that the technology also need to be understood by chartered accountants. I am not telling you to do a programming in that, but the fact is, when you talk about the control framework, whether it is application controls or any other process controls you talk about, what are those things which we need to look at? Today, larger organizations have limitation of resources, the kind of cost which is impacting them. But if we think from a point of view, whether a chartered accountant is in industry or is in practice, I think they can take this as a fantastic opportunity and support the entire ecosystem of an accounting software, which is very critical. I think when you go and understand the processes, when you understand the kind of codes which are there, when you understand the authority matrix which has been put in the framework, the kind of control mechanism which is there, when you talk about IFC framework, which is Internal Financial Control Framework, those framework particularly talk about automated controls, and manual controls. Lot of such things are being deliberated every time. And my young chartered accountants who have got into practice now nationally, internationally, whether it is CA, whether it is CPA, whether it is any other chartered accountant of the world, primarily if they start looking as an opportunity in SAP, I think that is something which they can really take care of. In a case like this course, this discussion is primarily from a point of view that as a chartered accountant, can I start getting into the control audits, systems audit, where I can show that this is a risk which is impacting my organization, this is my financial risk which is impacting my organization. If those kind of things are being collated and given to organization like SAP or any other accounting package, when you talk, there are multiple ERP packages which are there. So one among them is SAP. Undoubtedly, they have one more SAP which is called I think SAP One Business One, or something is being told which is for the smaller businesses. Friends, two, three things which are very critical as a chartered accountant in practice or industry. Two important factors. You can play a role of a bridge between the company which is implementing a tool and a company which is getting implemented. So there is a beautiful bridge which can be walked on, and you can actually create a very good professional, opportunity for yourself. Number two is with regards to once the implementation is done, post-implementation system audits is also a fantastic opportunity for our chartered accountants. With this, today the session which we are rightly said by the chairman, today it is just a start. And I think if we get a right feedback and the approach, we are going to take this thing forward as a small capsule, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days kind of programs where we can give a lot of new inputs and we can create good professionals in the entire ecosystem. With this, I would like to, introduce Sanjeev. Sanjeev Deshpande.
Yeah, just interrupting you for a second. You said if the viewership is right, well, we have crossed some 1,600 viewers already. And we have people joining in from France, Kenya, Saudi, the US. So I would just like to interrupt and tell the speakers this is the expectation. So it's now your job to basically satisfy all the viewers. Thanks.
Perfect, Manubhai. I think you have set the tone. I think Sanjeev also might have got now motivated to speak more about the approach as a practicing chartered accountant, as an industry member chartered accountant, what is to be required. But before Sanjeev comes and speak, let me just give you a quick, brief about Sanjeev. Sanjeev is the CEO of Intelligence India, who is responsible for India and Middle East operations. And the best part is, I think he should be not a CEO, he's an entrepreneur CEO, I can say, who started that not started, he's been part of that organization when the turnover of that organization was only 5 crores. And today they have close to 450 crores turnover, which is from 2013 to 2020. I think Sanjeev, rather than talking about, SAP or the tool, you should talk about how enterprising a person has to be. I think that will make a whole lot of difference. And your experience, his experience with regards to M&A, international, implementations, and more importantly, his exposure and being an MBA as well as an engineer, and completed his advanced certification in managing professional service firms by Harvard University, post-graduation certification course, and he's completed his graduation and certification in tool design, diploma in SQC, post-graduation diploma in computer application, MPM certification from PMI, etc. And the most important part is the transition of SAP, primarily when you are talking about from an accounting package, which is going to adopt, AI, right? And artificial intelligence and robotic process automation and many things. He is one of such persons. He has delivered multiple lectures in national and international forums. And we were fortunate to have him when we did a DAB conference in Hyderabad, and he gave a 2-hour speech. So it was a fantastic experience by all the members across. And I present you all Sanjeev Deshpande from a total different background. As an entrepreneur, I would like you to give us an input how our professionals can grow in this particular industry. Thank you, Sanjeev. Over to you now.
Thank you so much, Daya. I am really humbled by your introduction, and I hope you are all able to hear me. If you are not, please let me know. So I would like to begin with thanking Mr. Manu Agarwal, Chairman of DAB, for taking this initiative and giving us the opportunity to connect with you and also to talk to you this afternoon. And Vice Chairman Daya Nivas, you yourself are one of the best thought leaders out there today in the country. And along with your role, I think you are doing tremendous service to the CA as a profession. And I'm pretty sure all CAs do serve the country. So I think indirectly we're all, kind of contributing to the country's progress. I appreciate all the people who have joined from different countries. And I'm really, really amazed to hear the number. And as Mr. Manu Agarwal said, this is the first of many sessions that potentially could happen. And it is probably an almost impossibility to cover the entire breadth and depth of any ERP or the technologies around in a session. But what I would definitely would like to do in my first few minutes, or the limited time that I have to Ram, is to trigger some thoughts in your mind, and then maybe you can see what else you could do between this session and the next session, and how else we could you could yourself gain a lot of knowledge around this topic and why it is important. So there used to be a time where the CAs were, for example, probably were focusing on the CA as a primary career, as the practicing CAs. But if you look at any organization today, most of the businesses are either being led in the CEO role or in the CFO role or the controller role by CAs. So the Indian business direction, the thought leadership into even the Indian business is coming from CAs. Our CFO is a CA. If you look at a lot of these big five, be it KPMG or whatever, all these big five audit firms, not only they employs in the CAs for the auditing, but even the business advisory services are coming from CAs. This profession has transformed itself just from the being the custodians or the guardians of the business prudence and the business ethics, actually has evolved into the business driver role. And so when you are kind of driving the business, you need a lot of knowledge about the business, not only certain aspects of the business. So from that perspective, when you know an ERP software, you probably would understand from end to end how the business runs. Now, so maybe I'll quickly talk about what is an ERP. And most of you may be already aware, so excuse me if this is being redundant to you. But I think for the context, I probably will have to just spend some minutes talking about the ERP. Then I will talk about different systems that we work with and different systems that are involved in a business enterprise. So ERP is an enterprise resource planning software, and SAP is one of them. This provides the core system in which business is executed. In a classical term, we call it system of records. So anything that you do in a business has to be, in certain system, certain database. So this ERP becomes a primary system of record for any organization. So depending on the scope of that ERP and the scope of the business, that ERP software can potentially have anything from the raw material procurement to warehousing, receiving, production, sales, planning, distribution, transportation, finance, accounting, and profitability analysis. So it starts from the forecasting of the product and all the way up to the profitability analysis of a segment. So it covers end to end. And this becomes the primary system where the businesses execute their business processes. And this is where you get most of your operational reporting out. You use the system on a day-to-day basis to run the business. Now, whether you are doing it in an ERP system or whether you are doing it on a paper, but ultimately all of these business processes have to be executed and they need to be evidenced. So from that perspective, if you have multiple systems and if you are doing it on a disparate systems, then your ability to bring the entire business story together, ultimately to have one totally reconciled financials, is going to be almost an impossibility. So ERP has breached that gap. So ERP, because it is an end-to-end system, it connects all the business functions and makes it easy from the financial perspective to close the month and bring it's fully reconciled system within itself. ERP is always in reconciliation with each component. Procurement will always be in totally in sync with finance and accounting. Same thing with sales. Same thing with production, and same thing even with the cost accounting. So that's an ERP, and we call it a system of record. But you probably will be hearing talking about a lot of different systems these days. CRM, or supply resource management, or human resources systems, like success factors or Workday. All of these are called systems of engagement. For example, if you have a mobile phone and if you're able to order, using mobile phone to e-commerce application, or maybe using a Salesforce application, all those systems are systems of engagement. And then if you look at a lot of dashboards, I'm pretty sure Ms. Manu Agarwal and Daya you and also all the businesses also refer to a lot of dashboards. All these dashboards are basically what we call intelligent systems. So you have a system of record, you have system of engagement, then you have system of intelligence, business intelligence systems. But without the ERP, every other system won't function. Even if you look at the manufacturing execution systems that you install on the shop floor, or the manufacturing intelligence systems that you are kind of connected to the, either MES or to ERP, or any type of industrial IoT framework solutions, or blockchain solutions. All of these need to have a robust core, digital core. And SAP has a very advanced digital core system called S4HANA, which is built on the in-memory database of the SAP, which is HANA. And that actually has really helped a lot of companies to take their digitalization forward quickly. So in all, if you look at from the systems perspective, so ERP is an ERP, as we just talked about. It's a system, where you execute the business processes. Systems of engagement, this is on demand, wherever you can interact with the systems, basically to execute your business functions. Business intelligence is giving you the business intelligence. But then the data that comes into ERP has grown multifold now. Earlier, it was always used to be through the existing front ends, but now SAP has Fiori front ends. You can also use mobile phones. You can pull the data from social media. You can pull the data from different websites and using the microservices or the web services. So you can bring it all together and create dashboarding through intelligent systems on cloud, like SAP Analytics Cloud. This is kind of gives you overall perspective on what's going on in the systems. But if you now go into the digital, SAP has already adopted a lot of AI and ML technologies in the core ERP and also a lot of these systems of engagement. SAP's Analytics Cloud always, has incorporated the predictive services for the last 3 years. But now, especially if you deploy any of the SAP systems on the cloud and we are on any hyperscaler, and if you also use SAP's Analytics Cloud, your ability to consume all this predictive AI and ML services are extremely high. From that perspective, today the business is ready for what we call an intelligent ERP. So SAP does offer that, and I think today, while Ram focuses on this topic, I think he primarily will talk about S4HANA finance from perspective and also accounting and audit perspective. But SAP or any ERP for that matter will have a very robust functionality, as I said, in every one of the business functions. And maybe depending on your inputs and your guidance, if required, we'll probably conduct some sessions on some integrations. How does the finance integrate with different models of SAP, and how all of these things come together? But maybe for today, I think we'll focus on the finance, and then we'll go from there. And before I close and hand over to Ram, I must mention that COVID-19 has exposed a lot of these companies which did not have core systems, very strong digital systems. They really struggled to go remote. And then they found it kind of difficult to operate the businesses. So from that perspective, any business, any company not only need to have a solid footprint on the digital side, and you should be able to conduct your business remotely, but also then sometimes people need to be able to step into each other's shoes. And the finance CAs are the ones I think have really played a significant role, because their knowledge of the businesses compared to other business functions is more, because they see the finance accounting side picture, which is almost complete. So we have seen that a lot of CAs were able to step up and play roles in COOs, CFOs, CEOs, wherever there was a business continuity issues. We actually have realized that the CAs, especially our finance professionals, were able to jump and take over wherever there was a business continuity issues. From that perspective, once again, my tremendous appreciation for all the CAs out there. And again, I wish you the best session. And I thank you, Mr. Manu Agarwal and Mr. Dayanaya Sharma, once again for giving me this opportunity. And without any further ado, I would like to hand it over to Ram to walk you through the actual presentation of SAP S4HANA Financials. Thank you all so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Ram, just a moment. Thank you, Sanjeev. Couple of very interesting points from your address. Primarily, one is undoubtedly it is a time of intelligent system. Number two is remote access. Number three, undoubtedly, the intelligence of chartered accountants cannot be discounted at any given point in time in any scenario. When you talk about technology which need to be driven and the focus that need to be placed, I think we all are trying to do our best. And thank you very much. Rather, I'd say that, your words of appreciation for the profession as such gives a lot of positivity in the, in the society, in the industry, in the corporate world. And, coming from your side is always going to be the industry CEOs, if they appreciate the kind of role which we as chartered accountants are playing, I think that is what we want to achieve. I think even Manu sir is going to agree to that, and on his behalf also, I'm thanking you very much for giving this kind of positive note. And what more you want when your own senior director, who is the head of your center of excellence, he is no other person than Mr. Ramnathan. And most important part is he's a chartered accountant, he's a CPA, he's a CISA, he's PMP, which I don't know what it means, but certified IFRS professional, as a certified SAP professional and a certified SAP enterprising architect, has over 30 years of experience in, and all throughout his entire career, he's been with the accounting package, which is called SAP. And the kind of knowledge he might be carrying, one side of the table, he's learned a lot from being into, professional firms during his articles or might be post articles. Where I think he's worked with a couple of audit firms. And from the audit firm, today he's come to SAP, and from SAP, he's actually moved to your organization as a senior director. And the biggest advantage is, a chartered accountant who is heading the center of excellence means a lot about his knowledge, about his capabilities, about his thought process, and more importantly, the way I think he is going to take us through. I think it will make a whole lot of difference. And we are fortunate that he has always been a faculty at the institute also. On multiple platforms, he's come, spoken. So we have not a new person, but an old person, but might be at this level when we are projecting at the national and international platform. Ram, you have a bigger role to play. I am not going to talk more about your, credentials. When you are heading the center of excellence, the answer goes very straight and simple. I think, your knowledge, your wisdom, your ideas, your thought process with regards to SAP, I think is going to give us a chartered accountant. Might be if you are able to ignite even one chartered accountant to start his career to do some, system audit, or might be a process implementation ideas, that will make whole lot of difference. This entire webinar will go for a best possible thing. And the other side, when you talk about from the members in industry, they look forward to listen from the right person, because the technical people, when they come, every chartered accountant has to struggle as a CEO, CFO, might be, or as a organization finance department. Primarily, that impact goes only on the finance department first, and later the other parts of the system. First, implementation of finance and accounts is there, and then you actually expand the other ways. And rightly said by you, Sanjeev, it is an integrated system, and it is time that integrated systems are going to play a very crucial and important role. Today, what is important is not how you do business, data about business, how you did business, what are you going to do next, how things are going to move, statistical data, which is ultimately moving towards predictive technology. It is not descriptive or analytical. It is predictive technology based on my past. If my future can also be predicted in a very right perspective way, I think that is all going to be playing a different role. So friends, I have with me and as rather Ram, and Ram, what we are going to do is when you start your speech, we will try to be there for some time. We will keep our camera off so that you can take your presentation well, and anything which is required, Amit and the team is available. So be rest assured, it will be taken care of. So welcome, Ram, again back to ICAI, and look forward for your great contribution. Thank you very much. Over to you, Ram.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Manuji, Daya, and Sanjeev. Now you've set the benchmark or the baseline, so I need to either match or exceed, right? So that's good. I would like to take up the challenge and then move ahead. Okay. No, what I'll not keep talking. Rather, as we move on and I share the deck, I'll keep talking. So for now, I'll just move on to the deck sharing. Yeah.
Manisha.
Okay.
हो मी बोलले लाईकलीस का तू मी बोलले लाईकलीस का
Okay.
Can the other person mute? Can the other person mute, please?
Thanks. Thanks, Aya. Okay, so let me quickly jump into the topic for the day, right? So what are we thanks all participants for joining this webinar. Okay, and I would like to set up the structure on the following lines. All right. So typically, we have spent the last about an introduction on ERP and all that, and then now we are going to get into the details in terms of understanding and evolution of SAP Finance, and then move on in terms of the details, right? So what is the objective? Session objective, right? Session objective. Typically, at the end of this webinar session, you should be able to have an understanding in terms of foundation knowledge. Okay, in terms of what essentially the S/4HANA is, and the evolution of SAP today, and what is that you would look up to the SAP for, both from the finance domain perspective and as well as the auditor's perspective, right? So that's something which would look at. Yeah. Okay, so in terms of the agenda, okay, typically I would quickly touch upon the evolution of HANA, and then get into a discussion in terms of the recent transformation, the finance transformation which SAP is essentially aligned with the S/4HANA innovations. Okay, and also share with you some of those value benefits which both the enterprise gets and as well the auditors look up to, right? And then we put on to in terms of the question answer session. Yeah. So let's start off with the evolution where SAP S/4HANA, right? So typically SAP started off as R1 in 1972, right? So that was typically more of a server based DOS operating system, which was more of a standalone. Okay, then in 1979, SAP moved in terms of focusing on the centralized computing, right? And then further up in 1992, SAP looked towards a client-server architecture, and then it looked towards putting up in terms of the key focus was primarily in terms of bringing in efficiency and control to the customers, right? As we moved on, as the .NET world started, right, and it evolved, in 2004, SAP brought in something called worldwide MySAP ERP solutions, and from the finance perspective as well, there were a good amount of re-engineering happening with the IFRS evolution, right? So IFRS, bringing in IFRS convergence standards being laid and all that. So typically SAP also had to re-engineer their structure and look at bringing in something called new general ledger and parallel ledger reporting requirements to comply with multiple GAAP requirements, right? So that is something which was brought in. Okay, so as we moved on in 2011 onwards, SAP started leveraging on the HANA technical innovations, which is essentially trying to build the analytic applications on top of the transactional processing applications. Once this technical innovations happened, SAP also leveraged on those technology innovations for finance in terms of combining the finance and the MIS reporting requirements into one platform, bringing in something called a single source of truth, right? And also re-engineered some of their internal table structures and as well, and brought forth a good amount of foundation for the transformation process, right? So that's something with what is all that is something which we're going to look at now. Yeah. So typically traditional ERP was something like this, like what Sanjeev would given you in terms of system of record, system of intelligence, system of engagement, all that bit of it is all here, right? So the traditional ERP applications had different modules across financial accounting, management accounting, supply chain processes, sales and distribution, manufacturing, human capital management, those bits of it, right? So all that were the traditional bits of it. With the S/4HANA Finance, SAP typically re-engineered the whole submodules, right, into two aspects. One was in terms of trying to look at how the businesses are being looked at, how finance is trying to support the business, right? So typically every finance organizations were structured and rolling up to the CFO on the following lines, right? So financial planning and analysis, MIS reporting, those bits of it. The second one was in terms of the head of corporate reporting, typically taking care of the statutory reporting and the compliance formalities, right? The third bit of it is in terms of making sure the organizations are running well. They are capably supported in terms of the treasury activities. The fourth one was the core operations activities, the finance, receivables, payables, travel management, shared services activities, facilitating these operations with the core operations, right? So those bits of it. And of course, as the organizations, expand and they have scalable businesses, there are requirements in terms of compliances, and as well, there is a need for enterprise risk and compliance management. So these are the typical towers which are there within the finance, which SAP wanted to, also be aligned on their traditional modules as such, and thereby also, trying to leverage on the SAP best practices, right? So when it comes to those, typically they wanted to be aligned in terms of the latest leverage technologies as well. So the business process cycles were brought on, like for example, procure to pay, order to cash, record to report, or the core treasury functions, or the enterprise risk, functions, right? So these are all the bits of it which actually, was brought in. So I'm trying to, relate to you in terms of the traditional ERP and how it has evolved, right? So the traditional ERP had the core GL, AR, accounts receivable, accounts payable processes, or the treasury functions, or the controlling MIS reporting processes, or the analytical, the system of, intelligence, which Sanjeev was also talking about, right? And also the business planning and forecasting activities, right? So those were the typical ones. So I'm just trying to, bisect them into individual sub-elements of it, right? These are all the, individual pockets relevant, for that. Now, this is the evolution. Okay, with this, SAP, when they re-engineer in terms of their business process cycle wise, and also aligning with the towers, right? So typically this is the structure which they are trying to look at. So procure to pay, record to report, invoice to cash, treasury. So this is how SAP, with S/4HANA Finance starts talking, rather than the modules like AR, AP, asset accounting and things like that, right? So that's the sort of initial base set, right? Beyond the single source of truth which we talked about, right? So typically, getting into the finance transformation, how that evolves. Typically, business organizations have challenges and ever demanding requirements in terms of increasing their productivity, looking towards making better decisions, looking at reliable systems, and of course, while they scale up in terms of organically, they have a good system. At the same time, what they look at is considering such situations like COVID or any other, cyclical trends coming up and all that, they are, or any other emerging trends coming up, their system is agile and they are able to flexibly, adapt to the changing requirements. This is something which is also being looked upon. When these are the typical challenges to the business, right? For the finance, typically there are different challenges as well, right? So they also look at how can I lower the cost of finance. Okay, so with all these challenges, SAP, when they re-engineer the situation, they put up the best practices for all these, the business process cycles as we talked about. Okay, built on, and then align these sub-modules of AR, AP, all those processes into this process cycle. And not only that, with that in mind, with the best practices as the foundation, they built the innovations on these 4 business process cycles as the base, right? So that's what we would typically try to understand. Okay, so back to our 4 pillars, right? So the FP&A, the accounting and financial close, taking care of statutory, treasury, finance operations, ERN. Okay, so these are the what do you call people supporting the operations, right? So when SAP is re-engineering with the business process cycles and all that, what is that they typically have to finally deliver? They have to essentially provide something in terms of a real-time instant insight of information so that they can capably and effectively take decisions, right? At the same time, traditionally, people, we as finance, more familiar with Excel-based activities or all that. So typically, organizations work on non-system processes. So doing away with that, getting the organizations a better user experience, bring them closer, by different technologies like Fiori applications, which are going to show you, or the mobility aspects, which are going to bring the business and the finance together into the system, right? And the flexible and the non-disruptive processes, which are going to help in terms of the agility, like what we're talking today, like Sanjeev highlighted, right? The organizations who have adopted the ERP and we have been marching comfortably have sailed. Of course, they had business challenges on the revenues as well. But other than that, they have, progressed well in terms of managing their businesses otherwise, right? Unlike those who have not moved on to ERP, they've suffered, right? So typically, okay. Quick overview in terms of the structure, right? When they re-engineered, what SAP talked and looked at is in terms of the single source of truth, which is being talked about. When we talk about a single source of truth, it is a single source of truth across statutory reporting, the same element of information drilled down for management information system reporting, or this is at an entity level. Try to roll up for a multiple set of entities being subsidiaries or associates, roll it up into a financial consolidation as mandated in the IFRS as per the statute, right? So when you roll it up, so that is also the same truth, right? Or be it in terms of multiple gaps, the IFRS, IGAP or HGB or any other reporting requirements coming in, the same element of information being provided for churning. And multiple currencies as well, be it in terms of the functional currency of the legal entity being reported or in terms of other elements, right? Being a group reporting requirements where they could have a different currency requirement. All that bit of it is all considered in something called this universal journal, which is going to talk about, right? So that's a structure. Today, we are also with a single, when there is a need for a single source of truth, combining the management information and the statutory information into one is what is the order of the day. Right? That's what is being looked upon. With that single source of truth and the overlay of the analytical application on top of the transactional application, which we talked about on S4HANA, it's a high performance analytical application, right? You are able to get the businesses and finance supporting the business operations, work and support with the real-time data, enable the real-time processes. And once we have the OLAP, we call it Online Analytical Processing System aligned, okay, get the planning, forecasting and simulation activities like what if scenarios or sensitivity analysis or ABCD that can happen, okay, with the historical data. We're going to talk about subsequently predictive accounting, which is going to be the base for this topic. Right, all that bit of it is being enabled with this combination of OLAP on OLTP, which is enabled on S4HANA Finance. Yeah, so that's a key thing, right? Okay, so this is all from the nicer bits of it, right? So how is that enabled is something we wanted to also understand, right? So today, some of the customers working on SAP ERP, the traditional ERP, might have been working on SAP GUI, which is essentially portal enabled applications. SAP has re-engineered the user experience in terms of Fiori applications, which are having adaptability to multiple technologies. Okay, so here is where SAP is trying to put up a different structure into the whole bit of it. Right. So there are from the finance point of view, SAP structures on the following lines for the Fiori. One is the fact sheet, right? So fact sheet is essentially something like the facts which cannot change, right? Like a trial balance or a balance or a line item information of a particular GL account. These are examples of fact sheets. transactional applications, carrying out an incoming payment or outgoing payment to the vendors. So these are all carrying out a journal entry. These are transactional applications. On the other hand, there is also something called an analytical application. As I told you, the OLAP is also onto the OLTP. With that, you are embedding the analytics, okay, which is a significant move for the finance professionals, which when you see on S4HANA Finance would experience. And on top of it, when you have the finance, external statutory reporting and the management reporting combined and you leverage on the analytical applications, that's it. So you have achieved and you're able to capably, basically when I say you have achieved, you have set the foundation for supporting the business, is what I'm trying to tell. Okay. So this is an example. Essentially, I was trying to, also let me get into the details. Typically, otherwise you are still on PPT, right? So let us see. This is a sort of a Fiori application which the organizations look at on SAP S for HANA Finance. Okay, so you would see general ledger, related transactions or the applications, right? Or in terms of the periodic activities relating to GL or asset accounting, or there are transactions relating to master data, which is also being looked at. So you will have different roles, right, for Fiori and being looked at. Okay, so now what I would essentially do is you would see in the screen the different tiles. I would try to drill down in terms of the fact sheets, which are like trial balance or trial balance comparison, which you are seeing, right? I would just park it for now and look at a financial statement grid-based application, right, which is more of an analytical application, which would typically help you to understand, when I said a single source of truth, right, statutory data, okay, you are using for the MIS as well. So this is something which is you would experience when I try to get into the financial statements. So let me just get you to share that. So here is something like that, zero, which is ledger, right? So ledger is multiple gap reporting requirements, you meet it. Company code is the legal entity which you provide, for which you report on, right? Or the hierarchy ID, which I'm just taking, like for example, the IFRS financial statement version as the best practice, and just taking a period January to June of 2020, a comparable period of January to December of last year, which is 2019 as an example, right? And trying to, get into the details and drill down of a core financial statement, right? And with that, you are able to see IFRS grouping of a financial statement version, right? A grouping of current assets, non-current assets, right? So I'll drill down on current assets, or in terms of the income statement, right? So, or the gross revenue. So you would see that you are able to get down to a line item detail. So this is the typical level of information which is for statutory financials, right? So now I'm trying to pick up that information and trying to put it for a business segment, which is an operating segment reporting requirement, which is a mid of a statutory reporting requirement, right? So it is the same level of information you are able to see for a segment, which you are able to see like a segment A or segment B, or the the manufacturing site related segments, on the columns, right? Or I'm going to also talk about a profit center, which is the management reporting aspect of it, right? So the same level of financial statement is what you want to see. See here, you are trying to look at and slice and dice in terms of product A, product B, or profits, Veolia profit center as an example. These are all different profit centers which are management dimensions. You are applying the same financial statements, the IFRS hierarchy onto this for you to experience the single source of truth. Yeah, so that's the sort of structure you would look at. okay, which I just wanted to, get you experience, right? Similar to that is something like another application layer I would probably try to show you. This is in terms of analytical layer for an accounts payable, finance operations accounts payable, right? So here you see for the users, these are out of the box, KPI based, applications which are available. Okay, which enables the users, be it a AP accountant or a AP manager, as relevant. It helps them in terms of understanding what is the aging for the vendors for the particular legal entity, or what are the days payable outstanding, what are the cash discounts, utilization percentage or levels which they have achieved. Okay, all that bit of it, right? So these are something which is experienced today. Or I would also show you something on the accounts receivable. I would probably run through a video here for you just to get to the details. Okay, yeah. So this is like analytical application, accounts receivable, right? Which tries to drill down in terms of different agings of receivables, or in terms of overdue receivables today as the value, right? So I'm just trying to drill down to total receivables. Okay, so bear in mind it brings you some sort of a buckets, aging buckets available, right? So when I try to drill down within the aging buckets, the system would also provide me information in terms of the next level, like for example the top 10 customers, right? So that I'm able to remain focused in terms of what are those I'm expecting to follow up. Right, so it gives you the summary of information in terms of top 10 parties who are due. From here, even you can get into the line item information. Okay, for pass of time, I'm just trying to show you another application layer which is on the same AR overview, right? In terms of see. This is example of other similar to accounts receivable, which I'm showing. You have accounts payable, you have for GL, you have for asset accounting and on. So now let's get into the same accounts receivable to show to have a feel of the another aging bucket information or aspect, right? Yeah. So here you would see there are different aspects, right? Like even you can follow up on customers. Receivable, dunning letters are there, okay, or in terms of the aging information or day sales outstanding, right? So it gives you a complete, so that these are all out of the box, functionalities which are available, which you just, have to configure and then, go ahead with using it. So this is sort of information which I thought I'll just share with you, right? Similar to it is what asset accounting. So essentially, we have seen a single source of truth, right? The next aspect is in terms of the user experience. The third is in terms of the overlay of the analytical layer on the transactional layer for you to enable information for effective decision making, right? This is all something which are the base for the S4HANA finance, right? So now with this understanding in mind, okay, let's get back in terms of what are the critical aspects which an intelligent ERP typically looks at today. One is the state-of-the-art user experience, which we talked about. Okay, then what, right? When we are trying to look at our objectives, lowering the cost of finance, what is that we need to do? We need to make sure we are effectively working, right? So that be the case, we should look towards automations, right? That is where the robotic process automations or the artificial intelligence, in terms of machine learning capabilities of SAP comes in place, which we are going to look at. Right? Or trying to make sure, like what we saw in terms of the operational analysis information. Next level is the smart business analytical applications in terms of CFO dashboards or all those bits of it. Right? So these are all the elements which we have to look at it. Okay, so this is something which we are looking at it. How are we going to achieve? Right? See, what are the organizations doing today? Today, every finance organization is trying to spend much more time burning the midnight oil, spending time to support the operations, right? And very little time on the insights, right? So if that is the case, how do we make sure, we reach to efficiency, right? So that is where the automation as an element, right, is facilitating your cost efficient and compliant finance processes. Thereby, you are able to reduce your operational time onto probably 50% or 30% of the overall time which is being conceived today, right? And spend the saved time on the real-time insights, right? And okay, so what is the next question, right? Next aspect is, with this analytical capabilities which SAP is trying to bring in, spend that saved time on the predictive insights which are forward looking. So that is where the predictive accounting is going to come in, right? Which you're going to look at. What is that, right? So typically this is how, the finance transformation is being tried to be engineered by SAP and, getting the enterprises, embark on the S4HANA journey. And okay, so when I talk about the automations part of it, right, we talked about multiple business process cycles. So we need to be aware of in terms of what are those automations which SAP is trying to bring in terms of each of these process cycles, right? So typically in order to cash process cycle, you would see the advanced credit management, the related RPA elements, or in terms of process innovations on it, bringing in both SAP and non-SAP customers, manage the credits. Get organizations follow up on the dispute and collections management, provide the machine learning capabilities on cash applications, right? Or procure to pay processes. SAP tries to provide the OCR capabilities on invoice management, or in terms of the account GRIR account reconciliations, or the account reconciliations, machine learning capabilities, and all that. So these are something which SAP is trying to provide us. So these are something which we should be aware as well in terms of trying to make sure we use it, right? So this is an example of machine learning, right? So typically organizations try to apply their customer collections, right? So there is certain element of a judgmental element involved when receivable accountant or cash accountant tries to apply the payment on the customer's receivables, right? So that element is being intelligently, studied through the patterns, and the machine learning is applied. That is what is, being provided on the cash applications via machine learning capability from SAP. Yeah. So this is something which you look at it. This is on the automations bit of it on the machine learning and the AI, just as an example. I can keep going on providing detail, but we have a pass of time, so I thought we will show the basic levels of overview understanding now, and then this becomes the base for us for the next levels in terms of drilling into the details. So that's the overall objective of the current webinar, right? I'll go back to those, pillars which we talked about, the FP&A as an example, right? So now we'll try and drill down into the details in terms of what are those innovations which are going to, facilitate the finance, right? So let's move on in terms of the FP&A, right? Plan to optimize cycle. The finance planning analysis, SAP provides something called out of the box, planning contents, right, which have the driver based planning capabilities, okay, which can be leveraged on and integrated, so that right from day one we are able to look at this sort of an integrated planning solution. Okay, the question which would arise to all of us is, okay, so what is it, which is new, right? So this is where let's take an example of organization, which are having two or three legal entities. Today they can just look towards this SAP Analytics Cloud based driver based planning solutions, and then adapt and start planning for either the strategic planning, basically the goals, visions, objectives, bringing down to their business plans, all those integrated bits of it, relating these strategic plans into the capacity planning, basically the investment planning or capex planning, right? And Also the year-wise, they will have the annual financial statement plans broken down by revenue planning, price planning, material cost planning or production planning, right, in line with the capacity plans, the headcount plan, the marketing plan, all this rolling up to the profitability planning. And of course, when we talk about the sales planning, price planning and the material cost planning or the production planning, they have a bearing onto the working capital as well on the balance sheet. So when it comes to balance sheet, largely the capital expenditure and the working capital planning contributing. All these are based on a driver-based planning which are provided out of the box, which SAP offers on the cloud, which organizations can leverage and straight away start planning. Unlike erstwhile where they had to spend months on implementation efforts, right? So of course here they may have to spend efforts, but this is more in terms of using the out of the box capabilities of these planning applications. You don't have to start from the scratch. So that's the difference, right? So these are the sort of innovations which are being brought in so that there is increased accuracy because it's already integrated. Two, it provides a transparent and flexible processes because it's already a collaborative planning activity across businesses. I mean, finance or production or human capital, HR, all those functions. I mean, right? So all these are being integrated on a single collaborative platform with basic drivers. As I look at it in terms of committed volumes or all that, right? So this is a typical outcome of it, which I'm just trying to, depict for us in terms of trying to feel, right? Because I put up a sort of a structure in terms of different plans. How does it roll up is something which you may want to see. This is the example of an outcome of the driver-based planning in the system, which not only provides you a fact sheet bit of information, but also in terms of an analytical information on the different tiles and different, the graphical depiction of information which we wanted for better effective decision making. Yeah. So this is something which I talked about in terms of the driver planning, based planning, right? So other aspect is predictive accounting. This is the second part of it which I was talking about, moving from the real-time insights to the predictive insights, right? So that you are forward-looking. So how do we look at it? There are two ways to look at it. One, organizations are having a longer pipelines, project pipelines or revenue pipelines. Those are something called bottom-up predictions, right? So essentially, like you have bookings, sale orders, for next 2 years or 3 years, so those become the basis for you to predict. This is as simple as that, right? But this is an element which is being provided for you as a basis for prediction, so that you are able to, capably act on it. Okay, so another scenario, right? A top-down prediction, what is it? So these are basically the time series algorithm information on the historical data. And of course, there could be challenges, something like the cyclical, fluctuations which come in for industry like automotive or even this sort of a scenario, like COVID scenario, which is cutting across, industries. So you can bring in those elements of those changes, give those algorithms so that at a top-down prediction, we can have the, predicted revenues, profitability, all that being planned on an accelerated basis, so that we are able to get to an effective, decision making. So these are all something which are provided today, right? Okay, so these are something which we looked at. Automation, we looked at out of the box solutions for financial planning. We looked at information in terms of capable decision making accelerators and all that, right? So now let us move on in terms of we looked at single source of truth. The second element of the single source of truth is something we are looking at. Margin analysis, erstwhile we used to call it as a controlling profitability analysis data, right? So this is something which, is with the same element of single source of truth of the complete financial information, like an income statement. You are trying to drill down that element into three major aspects. One, the enterprise segment elements like a legal entity, operating segments, responsibility centers or profit centers or the channels of, reaching the goods to the customers and all that, right? Or products segments, which is in the nature of type of a material which we are trying to sell it to the customers, right? Or the hierarchy of those, or the grouping of those products in terms of the accounting perspective. Or the third element is something in terms of customer and market segments. So there are three segments I would see here. Enterprise segment, which is relevant to the organizational unit aspects. The second is the product segment. The third is the customer and market segment. So with this margin analysis, the same income statement information, we have the capability to slice and dice into a cubical information for revenues, discounts, COGS, gross margin. If we allocate costs, overheads, we can even get it down to EBITDA or those level as well. So that's the level of capability which we are talking today in terms of the same single source of truth, talking from a statutory still down to a MIS, further getting down in terms of the product profitability or market segment profitability aspects. Yeah. So that's the element, right? So having said that, I wanted to, we are all familiar with numbers, right? So how it is getting achieved is something we should know, right? So typically this is the whole structure. We have sales, we have cost of production, we have production costs or the variances we call it, or we have overheads, right? So typically SAP has provided some sort of business add-ins or the value additions or the innovations on these split of components into material, labor, attributable overheads for two things. One is the production variances and the COGS split. So this has enabled this single source of truth and at the same time drilling down and extending to this, controlling profitability, which is marginal. So this is one sort of a huge innovation, which I would say to all the people who are currently on the traditional ERP or those customers who are directly embarking onto the HANA Finance, right? So this is the outcome. Always try to, put up sort of structure in terms of what is that which is invested and finally the outcome. So this is an example of outcome you're seeing enterprise element and the product element and also the customer element in terms of the sales organizations, customer groups, etc. as well. So all the three bits of it you are able to see here, right? So that's sort of a structure which I'm trying to, put across to you. Okay, so that was in terms of product profitability. Okay, so now the question would come is in terms of, okay, my business is in terms of more on projects, right? So how will I deliver, how will I get my margin analysis is something which some of you might be thinking, right? So exactly, SAP address both, product centric and project centric, customers, right? So that's where we are trying to look at the recognized margin, recognized revenues or the unbilled revenues, which used to be called the erstwhile IAS. Today it's all called unbilled receivable or the contract asset and contract liability bit of it, right? Which is getting into the the work in progress elements, those bits of it. Okay, the recognized margins on the top, projects which are profitable. So those are bits of it. So this is all what we talked about the pillars on the financial planning analysis. Now I am trying to step into the second element on the financial and accounting close, which is the core record to report cycle, right? So what are those innovations which typically organizations try to look at? What is this essentially? What is SAP, handling here? Very important things which I wanted to highlight is first aspect. When it comes to record to report, we are looking at as chartered accountants, be it auditors or guys working on finance function, what are we looking at? First, ensuring compliance with the statutory requirements or the gap reporting, right? Second, compliance with the taxation, be it direct taxes or indirect taxes. 3, there has to be a transparency on the financial reporting in line with ICFR, the internal control of financial reporting aspects as well, right? The last aspect I would say is making sure accounting is aligned for all the business events, right? A complete start to end integration aspects of it. You would see on screen there are some elements in terms of coverage on the statutory aspects, right, and as well other aspects to the second level of statutory aspects on entity close and group close, corporate close or group close, right? So like in terms of when I talk about that, as I talked about a single source of truth, which was talked about for a single entity level, the same level of information, with something called a group reporting functionality, SAP has essentially made the customer's job easy with, of course, this embedded analytics and OLAP thing available. Group reporting is a functionality which can work here itself in the S4HANA. Right. By this process, there are 10, let's take an example. There are 14 legal entities. Okay. 10 of them are already on the same SAP instance. There are 4 legal entities which are not in SAP. Just, have certain process definitions in place for those 4 entities, get them to do a closure here. Right. So SAP also provides something called advanced compliance management. Okay. Disclosure management. Those are all the tools which are to facilitate the compliance. Right. So these are all, or typically there are also tools on REFX, which is called real estate module lease accounting, which is IFRS 15 requirement that is also supported through REFX, or revenue accounting, which is supported through a revenue accounting submodule, I would say, within finance, which is to comply with the IFRS 15 as such, right? So these are all bits of it trying to make sure. Okay, so now when I talk about financial consolidation, there are of course challenges, right? It cannot happen just like that. So SAP provides something called intercompany reconciliations. These are some sort of enablers for you to proactively carry out reconciliations prior to the closure at the entity close itself, so that you get geared for the consolidation. This is something which you're going to look at it as well, yeah? So now let's get to the group reporting part of it, right? So this is where I was trying to talk about, right? So there are about entities which are on SAP, non-SAP. There are companies on which large conglomerates who have multiple instances. They work on other than that as well. So typically once the entities close their local financials at the legal entity level, it's called a local close or an entity close. So that's where they do a reporting of the information for consolidation, right? So once they do it, that's the data collection part of it, right? Once that is done, the data validation or the currency, if there are multiple entities across countries, there is a currency translation, right? So currency translation, foreign currency translation, which we are all familiar with, that takes place. Then, as I told you, the intercompany reconciliation as an enabler, if we have already done, we are getting geared for the intercompany elimination processes. And then line item consolidation or equity method basis, the recognition of, goodwill, minority interest, elimination of, investments and all that take place, and line item consolidation is done. And then finally we are into the reporting. And then, we move on, right? So this is a sort of a structure. Okay. Now your question is, okay, this is something which I'm doing today. Where is that I'm gaining, right? That is where the change is. Here, when we are overlaying it on the same system, naturally you would carry out certain activities prior to the end of the month or end of a quarter. Examples, the intercompany eliminations, or, you also get to some sort of a real-time, consolidation activities where you can do consolidation calculations and get geared. Thereby, typically you can, we have seen customers saving at least about 25 to 50% of their time for the finance close. Thereby, they are staying effective and efficient for the reporting purposes. Yeah, when I say effective and efficient, the accuracy improves, the time is saved, and that is where they are able to get the reporting consistent. Okay, and they are able to drill down from the reported financial information to the standalone financial information to the document, even if there is requirement for compliance. So that is where the transparency and the depth of drill down is facilitated and is applied consistently. Yeah, this is where I was talking about this intercompany reconciliation as a tool. Right, this is a tool which is a constant on. It's like a Even today you can look at the intercompany reconciliations. There are companies working on SAP, there are companies not on SAP. Only those cases you need to make sure the data is loaded, right? You can do these activities even before the end of the month. In this process, you get geared for the closure faster. So these are accelerators for closure. Yeah. So this is an example again. When you do the activities prior to day zero, naturally, when you are also enabling the other intercompany users to get access to the data, you are facilitating them in making sure the day minus 3, day minus 4 or day minus n, they have access and they reconcile. Naturally on day zero, you are close to the closure. Yeah. So that's a sort of a structure. And again, you have something called, accelerated finance closing cockpits. These are also Fiori enabled. So across processes, you can accelerate and make sure you are able to look at values as well. Yeah, this is another example of a sort of a GRAR reconciliation where people used to spend hours in terms of reconciliations and trying to look at what are those goods received for which the invoices are not received, what is the breakdown of the GRAR account, which is auto accrual, all those bits of it. Today we have a machine learning tool which is available, which provides you out of the box information in terms of this. The complete breakdown you're able to see on the GRAR accounts. You can cluster it and prioritize it at PO level or even at item level, and then be transparent on the reporting part of it. So that's the level. Or in terms of, this is another example of accrual process, right? So typically how organizations working on accrual processes without the accrual management, right? So typically they may have to do certain manual judgmental, valuations and all that. Then they will look at challenges on incoherent postings and all that. But with this accrual management on S/4HANA, typically organizations are able to demonstrate the complete data structure, right? Right from the calculation, they provide the auditability as what typically the auditors look at. Right to the purchase order, the breakdown of the line items at the goods receipt or the potential, basis of calculations for the, accruals. So this is sort of a thing. This is the example of a machine learning, right? Okay. So now with this understanding, typically we have understood, the capabilities on the analytics, the capabilities on the automation part of it, the capabilities on the predictive accounting part of it, right? So now, much more focus on the automation aspects, right? So there are three bits of the criteria on this RPA and machine learning which we need to be aware. One is in terms of conversational AI, as we call it, right, which is like a chatbot where you interact and then it provides you those initial exceptions and then you are guided and then you look at it. The other aspect is in terms of the executional capabilities where that is where the mundane repetitive tasks are getting alleviated and then you keep moving. Or in terms of the machine learning, where the human judgmental applications are being studied, the computer, we are enabling the computer to study it and then get those exceptions management and all that. Also, like it can provide a proposal, system can provide a proposal. Once you confirm, you can do the posting as well. So sort of a thing is something we can do it, right? So this is a sort of structure. So that's it on the record to report sort of a structure, which I thought I'll quickly get you an overview on the particular pillar. With that, I'll move on to the third pillar in terms of the treasury and risk management. Okay. So typically the treasury and risk management, there are 3 or 4 major elements, right? One is the cash and liquidity management, where typically organizations try and manage their current cash positions, right? Trying to make sure they are optimally working on their working capital, minimize their interest costs. So that's the overall objective. So that's the structure on the cash and liquidity management. Debt and investment management, essentially the functionality to support the investments or debts, any means in terms of bonds or debentures, all those bits of it, or secured loans or short-term, loans, all those bits of it, right? So, or in terms of payment and banking communications, the way seamlessly, we can talk with the banks in terms of data, be it in terms of outgoing payments to vendors or the collections of, from customers through the banks. So those bits of it as well. So all that is something which you're going to look at those, right? So when it comes to it, significant amount of investment has been done on this treasury in terms of we have collected all the information. So now what is that we need to do? We need to basically make sure we analyze on these and then capably deploy our resources so that we are able to effectively manage our cash, right? This is one example where there are different out-of-the-box Fiori applications. Like I showed you 2 or 3, Fiori applications or groups. We looked at it, right? A similar structure is what I'm trying to show you here, where the treasury also, SAP provides you Fiori applications which are embedded in nature of embedded analytics, which provides you effective information for timely decisions. Example is, it gives you in the slide, you have bank fees as an information. How is it progressed? Or in terms of cash flows, which we are going to look at later, right? Or in terms of fluctuations on the mark to market, on the foreign exchange forward covers, okay? Or in terms of drill down on the maturity profiling of debts or investments, right? All those bits of it. Or how does it work on the interest rate swaps? Or what is my exposure on the interest rate swaps, right? All those bits of it are being tried to be provided on a analytical information so that you are able to quickly take decisions. And these are applications which are available to treasury accountants or treasury managers as appropriate, where they can quickly work on and deployment of funds, or making sure the settlements take place on timely manner, right? So this is an example of cash and liquidity management, where typically organizations look at deploying cash flows, right, from one bank to another if there is a cash credit and a collection account as an example, or making sure I assess today's cash position, make sure if there is any surplus cash, I deploy it on a liquid funds or short-term funds as appropriate, if that is a viable balance of, over interest, or I minimize my cash credits or term loans to make sure, I reduce my interest costs. Yeah. So these are bits of it. Okay. So that is from the treasury bit of it. Okay. The fourth pillar is my collaborative finance operations. Okay. So this is where finance operations essentially comprises of finance operations over receivables, finance operations over payables and all that. Right. So typically, what SAP looked at was, though they were very well automating and integrating, from sales and distribution to financial accounting, or from payables to, financial accounting and controlling. What was typically lacking was more in terms of the interfacing with the banks, in terms of making sure the organizations have better visibility on the collections and they are able to deploy cash better, right? So that was lacking. So SAP what typically has done is they have done innovations on the cloud extensions on customer payments. And with the emergence of the, digitalization, all that, thanks to demonetization, the digitalization has gone significantly up, across enterprises. So SAP's cloud on digital payments, the digital payments add-on as a, a payment hub, integrating with the payment service providers and back onto the SAP applications are all provided out of the box, whereby we are able to, effectively collect the cash and deploy accordingly and manage the working capital. So this is something which has happened, right? That's what you're looking at. So these are out of the box solutions which have, been put in on S/4HANA on cloud, and which is something, as I told you, the point of sale. Okay, put up a request, gets to the payment hub, and then We have the SAP S for HANA or any other customer application where the receivables are there. Okay, it gets applied. And then again, when it comes to credit card, we need to engage with the payment service providers in terms of validations, the credentials, all those bits of it, and making sure the payment is happening in a secured manner. So that's all happening through the digital payments add-on. So or the customer payments application where you are able to effectively apply it on SAP S/4HANA on the side, right? So these are sort of information which are available on the operations side as well. Okay, so this is all something we have looked upon in terms of what is that SAP can help in terms of the finance function, right? So now, with that understanding, let us also try and understand in terms of how SAP can help the auditors as well, right? Of course, when I say auditors, it is not just the external audit team as well. It is also with regard to the internal audit and the ERM team as well, right? So these are something which I thought, are very relevant for us. So that we have a diverse audience, we should enable an understanding and make sure all of us are enabled in terms of what are those controls or functions which we should look up to SAP when it comes to audits, right? So back on that. First, internal controls, right? All of us are, looking at SAP, meaning not, the SAP as a tool, right? I'm talking about the SAP as basically the standards on audit, right? So I'll go back probably 20 years before where I was an auditor as well. So typically we used to talk about those assertions, those called EROC, VAMP and all that, existence, rights and obligations, occurrence, all that, valuation, measurement, presentation and disclosure. These are all the bits, we look at it in terms of it, right? So all these are in our audit standards. So typically when we have all the how is SAP as a software providing is something we may want to know, right? That is where we are trying to get into the details, right? Internal controls over financial reporting, prerequisite. SAP provides maker and checker controls, park and post functionalities, workflows out of the box available on the system for us to enable it, where we make sure the person approving is in, or the person processing and the person approving are independent, right? So this is one such base. Again, same thing apply, block and release process, where there are exceptions, right? Example could be noise tolerances, right? You set certain tolerance checks. When there is an exception to that, logistics invoice verification, a particular vendor invoice is not in line with the rate of the purchase order, say exceeding 2% or not even zero tolerance. Let's take even a zero tolerance. The system, blocks those vendor invoices, and somebody has to review those exceptions. Okay, system provides those values. What is the reason for the block? Right, and somebody reviews it and approves it. Probably, it's a retrospective price increase where probably he would go back and accept. Right, these are examples. Right, so exceptions, payment blocks, duplicate invoice checks, configured, stochastic blocks. These are all on one side. Right, other aspects like master data. There are certain fields in the masters where organizations can identify as sensitive fields. The minute they are identified as sensitive fields, any changes to those fields will have to be approved. Then only such vendors will be available for making payments. So there are such controls available, right? So which we may want to be aware of, right? Or in terms of inbuilt validations and controls brought in from the organization structure controlling the master data, key data configurations controlling the master data, so that the relevant values on masters are being controlled and properly maintained. the master data information controlling the transactions. So these are all inbuilt validations and controls which are available, and specific validations which we can also put through, right? So these are all something which are available. Or let's talk about the automatic account determination configurations, cross modules. Whenever there are raw material movements or inward receipt of a raw material, the system automatically posts entry on a financial accounting, debiting inventory raw material and crediting GRIR accrual, right? Or when that particular material is consumed, okay, the system posts a material consumption to a particular production order in which it is consumed and crediting the inventory account, right? So these are all automatic accounting, which is happening in finance, which is again controlled through the configurations. These are also controlled. So manual transactions don't happen for those GL accounts. You can have post automatically only those bits of it as well, right? These are all the control bit of it. The other aspect is transparency, availability of audit trails, change histories for such changes, roles and authorization definitions for following in nature, like you have parent roles and derived role concepts. So you define like I told you, accounts payable accountant, accounts payable manager. This is a general role. That can be a parent role. Now you are identifying and assigning it to a particular manufacturing plant or legal entity. So you are assigning it to that particular derived role. So these sort of controls are available. So you cannot make changes to the derived role other than the authorization values. You can only make changes to the parent role. The parent role changes automatically are adopted on the derived roles. These are examples of roles and authorization controls. So again, you can have you can make sure finance transaction of a particular manufacturing unit user cannot see the finance transaction of another manufacturing unit, right? These are examples which can happen as well, right? So those are a bit of control, which are existence which we may not be aware of in terms of ICFR. The other bit of it, the audit information system, right? SAP provides certain Fiori applications as a part of roles, auditor roles. Okay, these are available. We can just adopt it and start using them, which enables you in terms of details of transactions and display, where you can look at audit trails as what I talked about, the controls, all those bits of it. Yeah. Okay. So having understood this sort of internal control over financial reporting framework and authorization controls and all that, let me try and drill down in terms of those specific tools also beyond this what SAP offers, right? SAP offers something called governance, risk and compliance solution. So it has 3 or 4 components to it. I'm going to drill down to that. Before I drill down to that, what I want to enable you is the governance, risk and compliance is essentially trying to be positioned for ensuring compliance, demonstration of organizations' compliance, trying to make sure there is transparency across the organization. Trying to make sure the CFOs and the CEOs of the organization, when they are providing certain assertions over the financial statement, these financial information under the underlying controls, processes, sub-processes, tasks, transactions are all rolling up, right? And the information is available, right? So with that, we will see what are those, essentially trying to look at. In terms of the integrated GRC solutions, when I say integrated GRC solutions, these governance, risk and compliance solutions talk to the transactional applications, talk to the analytical applications and provide those information, right? So that's the whole bit of it. And these are scalable, right? Today, when you deploy these for say 10 legal entities and inorganically tomorrow you grow into, you acquire a company and trying to deploy, that is also element, which the scalability offers, right? So this is something. And as I told you, these GRC solutions are embedded, like the analytical applications are embedded on the transactional. These GRC solutions are embedded on the business applications, right? Whereby you get the real-time information, so there is no lag, there is no issue, and we are using the state-of-the-art technology like Fiori or mobility, all those bits of it, right? So that's the aspect which we wanted to just share. Okay, so getting into details, you would see a lot of this different buckets here, right? One is in terms of the access controls. Okay, making sure the segregation of duties, the internal control of financial reporting, Sarbanes-Oxley compliance is in line in terms of roles and authorizations. It provides those SOD risks, violations, and all that. It provides the capability to define the SOD risks or the library. Exceptions are being analyzed in comparison to the actual roles and look at it, right? So that is this diagram which I'm trying to depict, right? Which we're going to get into the detail soon, right? The other one is the process controls. Typically, process controls is where there are controls which we are saying, right? These controls are aligned to the processes. The processes are aligned to the organizations. And we roll up to the organization and then the CEO and the CFO, right? So now when we talk on these lines, we also have control owners, process owners, organization owners, and then the CEO and the CFO. So typically we may want to make sure this control is being tested. Automated test on controls, manual test on controls are all carried out. Effectively, exceptions are being looked at and deployed, something looked at, right? Or risk management, which we are going to look at it as well. Or the audit management as a tool as such, right? These are 4 bits of it which we will just look at it. Before that, we call something like three lines of defense, right? Quickly get into that. We have operational management, right? As one set of stakeholders. The other set of stakeholders are risk and compliance management, right? The third is independent assurance. When I say independent assurance, it could be internal auditors and statutory auditors who are independent of the business, right? Not that whether they are external or internal, they are independent to the business activity is what I'm trying to say, right? So the operational management, they typically look at 2 aspects of this, the GRC tools, the risk management and the process controls. What do they do? What do they look at in terms of risk management? You may want to look at what are the risks which are inherent to the organization, the identification of those risks, analyzing those risks, how the organization is responding to those risks, how the risks are either remediated, mitigated, or shared, reinsured, all those bits of it. Or exceptions, how are they monitored and reported thereon, constant activity, right? The other aspect is process controls. I explained to you, right? So essentially making sure the test and controls, automated test and controls are being there and rolling up at process, organization, and in terms of controls, owners, everybody will sign off or exceptions being noted, rolling up to CEO, CFO, so that when the CEO or CFO are giving certain assertions, the process controls will have the supportive evidence for the tests and controls. Yeah. The risk and compliance management team typically looks at the process controls and the regulatory management by green light, which provides them, like for example, this sort of COVID situation, or the sort of cyclical trends in something, or the Holocaust, anything as an example which is a bearing on their business. Agro industry, Holocaust could also be a equivalent of a COVID or a bigger issue for them, right? So these are something which they would also analyze, look at it, right? So or the independent assurance team who look at all the 4: risk management, regulatory process, and audit management, because they are independent people, so they necessarily have to look at the holistic picture. Okay, so that's the structure. Drilling down onto the access controls, I shared with you in terms of the ICFR or Sarbanes-Oxley compliance, trying to make sure the SOD library is in place, the exceptions to the, the SOD are being assessed and then analyzed. On an ongoing basis, those roles are properly provisioned, okay, defined and all that. So that's the access controls part of it. The process controls which we saw today, just about that. The risk management, which we looked at it, right? What is important is identifying, planning the risks, analyzing, responding, and monitoring and reporting. Yeah. Or the audit management, which is most interest to us. Most of us are familiar with this. Planning the audit, where typically you identify the auditable item, right? Who is to audit, what has to be done, and all that. Or the audit plan, create an audit, then identify and initiate the audit. Once you initiate it, then comes the audit work plan, and then you will have the roles and responsibilities defined for each of these activities, and then review the work program. Then comes the execution, right? Where when we execute, what do? Typically, we create work papers, right? Provide the evidences for the tests, and then identify the findings, and then report. And then the exceptions, typically once they reported to the process owners or control owners, they will provide their feedback or review their actions, and then reopen the work papers, right? And then you provide a report, review the audit report, and issue, right? So this is sort of a structure we have. Okay, so this is just to demonstrate in terms of how you plan, right? Where you have definitions of audit facilities, what is that audit, all that bit of a definition, right? Or in terms of the register of all the audit points, which auditable points, which we talk about, right? Or in terms of when you execute, whether you are satisfied with the outcome of the audit, or there are observations. If there are observations, how do you document those, and what is the level of risk or the priority which is to be looked at, right? Very important. And then have a definition of an action plan which is to be done by the control owners or the process owners, okay, and then share the findings. That's it. In terms of it, when you look at this sort of a structure, the overall part of it, we have those 5 pillars we talked about, okay, aiding the whole function. While the business has challenges in terms of productivity, decision, need to have take better decisions, need to have more trust, need to be flexible. SAP provides information in terms of data through analytics, or supports through automation or artificial intelligence, RPAs or machine learning capabilities, making sure the single source of truth or the out-of-the-box solutions provide reliable supportive information for finance teams for operations through assurance. This tool is being agile and a scalable one and adaptable to the changes. Example, like we are talking about today, right? So with all this, what is that we are able to achieve? We are able to make sure there is a lower cost of finance to the organization. Of course, by adopting the best practices on those different process cycles as we talked about, plan to optimize, record to report, invoice to cash, treasury functions, finance operations, all those bits of it, right? Drilling down, which we saw in the So that sums up in terms of giving an overview. So this session was largely trying to quickly take you through in terms of what is SAP, what has been the SAP's evolution, how SAP has transformed the finance, how SAP S/4HANA Finance has aligned to the emerging changes to the business requirements and the ever need technological changes, ever emerging cyclical trends. How still we can try to optimize on our costs and look at an effective, stable, scalable solution for ensuring the compliance. Yeah. So that sums up in terms of it. Now I would be happy to answer any questions which we have. so that we can take it back. Okay. So back to
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. If you could just stop the screen share.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you, Ramnathanji, for such a wonderful presentation. And yes, there are questions which we've been receiving, and most of the questions are whether you will be able to share the PPT with the participants. So, well, if you can, okay, but even otherwise, I can simply assure the participants that yes, the recording of this program would be available with this same link, and they can view it later whenever they feel that they want to see the presentation. Well, another few questions which I'd like you to elaborate upon is, can this be used for educational institutions for a turnover of roughly around about 30 crores? This is one question.
Oh, okay. That's great. Okay. So actually, absolutely yes. There are a lot of educational institution customers for SAP, even universities who are using SAP. It's a typical nature of the same cross-functional processes, the transactional processes which are, getting enabled into the system. Of course, when it comes to the educational aspects, they may have a heavy focus on the human capital management, the learning contents, the library bits of it, where the SAP's components on success factors and the human capital management will play a significant role, supported by, of course, the back-end finance processes. Yeah, absolutely yes.
Okay.
Answer is yes. Yeah.
Okay. Another question is, S4HANA being a completely cloud-based system, what specific data threats should be taken care of?
Wow. That's a good point. Okay. SAP S4HANA for information has both the on-prem solution and as well a cloud, based solutions, right? So this is something which I just wanted to, step back and, correct that level of understanding. Okay. So now stepping back onto the specific question on what sort of controls will have to be, put up. Essentially, we are talking about authorization, controls, as I explained to you in terms of some of those, the last 10 minutes or 15 minutes, you may want to drill down in terms of the authorization controls, or specifically onto the the data security aspects. These are something which may want to be, aware of. But naturally, once you are aligned with the SAP's best practices on these, cloud-based requirements, meaning when I say your side, the elements at the customer side is where to make sure. Yeah.
Okay. Now another question is, what is the difference between SAP S4HANA public cloud, private cloud, and on-premises version?
Wow.
Is it good to say that S4HANA cloud is good for medium to large scale enterprises as compared to previous versions which were primarily limited to large scale enterprises only?
Okay.
I think what the query basically wants to ask is this cloud version, cheaper version, where even medium-sized organizations would be able to implement that.
Absolutely. Okay. So now, two things, right? First point, the on-prem SAP S4HANA SAP S4HANA on-prem or SAP S4HANA cloud first, right? SAP's innovations are all same as far as whether it is on-prem or, cloud. Now, getting into the details on public cloud or private cloud, right? See, the difference in public cloud and private cloud is, the public cloud has limitations in terms of specifically customizing to the individual customer's requirement, right? Because they provide certain set of structures and we'll have to follow it, right? That's where the whole point is. Private cloud, as you look at it, it's just the hosting aspect, right? So it is almost as good as on-prem, I would say, other than the fact that instead of you investing and, having a capex, Okay, it's a private cloud. You are looking at an operational expenditure, and you are utilizing based on the number of usages or licenses or whatever as appropriate, and it is an operational expenditure. That's a private cloud. So now the question you need to understand between public cloud and private cloud is as simple as public cloud will have a good amount of out of the box solutions and very minimal customizing or no customizing. Whereas private cloud is as good as what you customize for your need as you do in the on-prem. Yeah, that's the change.
Okay, and a lot of questions are coming in for basically people wanting more, saying a detailed session so that we'll look into. Thereby, do you have some questions, or should I take some other questions also?
Manu bhai, with great difficulty, I am continuing with my iPad.
Okay.
As the power, so I am not able to access the other laptop to see the questions.
No problem. I'll continue. So another question is, some companies have in-house developed ERP accounting solutions. There are others who are implementing IBM analytics solutions. What would you advise these companies for cost-effective solutions?
Simple. I would say, move on to SAP S/4HANA and the analytics cloud. As simple as I could talk about, right? But not that I'm trying to, dodge the question. I'm trying to essentially answer from the point of view of, as you rightly said, 9 out of 10, large scale customers or top 500 are using SAP, right? That answers this question. So essentially, SAP's best practices are there. Large scale organizations are adopting based on which the best practices are also getting tuned. As good as we adopting those best practices and the innovations and the technology investments which SAP does. That's the point, right? So that is how we can get the benefit on. Yeah, that's the reason I would say. Rather than looking at custom solutions, look at probably the public cloud or private cloud or the on-prem as the budgets could organization.
Okay, so one more, a very direct question. Which entities can you think of going for SAP in terms of size? It's very simple size. He's not talking about volume, just the size.
Any level of organizations, can move on SAP S/4HANA. If we take, let me answer this way: a small scale organization with about 100 crores of turnover or 200 crores of turnover, they would rather move into something on, probably a public cloud. Not look at much of customizing, using the out of the box solutions, and then still be adhered to it. They manage through their operational expenditure. Next level, about 10,000 crores of companies, but still they don't want to make investments. They want to make sure they do it on a variable cost basis. They look at a private cloud, right? On the other hand, there are organizations which are conglomerates which may want to have their own system, have those bits of it. They use the S/4HANA on-prem. So this is the differentiation. But answer is everybody can adapt to the
basically the rider, I think, which you put is some 100 odd crores of turnover.
It's an illustration,
and I think also depending upon the profitability.
Absolutely right.
50 crore company may have a huge volume and a great profitability, so it may be able to afford it, but a 100 crore company with less transactions, less profitability may not be able to.
Absolutely.
Okay, the next part of the same was SAP ERP versus SAP B1. The key differentiator should be?
Yeah. Okay. See, as you see, today the B1 is again re-engineered today, right? So they talk about out of the box solutions. It's a similar structure, right? It would be one scale level down as what you look at as a public cloud, I would say, right? So if there are organizations which are smaller scale, which don't want to get into a larger structure, even much lower than the public cloud requirements, they would use B1. Yeah. Otherwise, we're to larger.
Yeah, please. Okay, now we have a question from somebody in Noida, Varun, I think it is. says since SAP gives solution to the whole organization, but still a lot of companies do not implement SAP in all the departments. It is generally found in the finance department, and that too used in a limited way. I found this in a lot of organizations, even big. So, well, for you to answer that would be easy, but I think I can also answer this. This is basically, I think, the implementation pain or somebody in the organization taking the right amount of pain. If that is there, I think the implementation is easy and is done. But if the pain taken by the organization is not there and all left to some third party, then I think it becomes difficult. If I'm correct, it's okay. Otherwise, you may correct me.
Absolutely, sir. You are absolutely on dot. Just to add to those points, you talked about the project sponsors, the key definitions of the project sponsors, the communication, the depth of the communication the project sponsors give it to the users is very, very important and significant for the effective use and deployment of the solutions. Right? Organizations do investments by way of on-prem investments or in terms of the private cloud subscriptions. Right? It is for the organizations to make sure it is put best to use. We keep the customizing sessions to the minimum. That is where the organizations would get the best. Like the example, this sort of innovations are coming in. We are seeing they are all aligned to the business process cycles and the towers which organizations run. So you better use it, then you get the best out of it. Yeah.
Okay. Now a question from Varun Jain from London. He asks, SAP Audit Management is a specific module in SAP. If yes, are there any differences for internal audit management and external audit management?
As I gave an example, yes, audit management is a module within the GRC suite of solutions, right? So as I told you, there are 5 suite of solutions within the GRC, right? So audit management is one of it. So GRC can be deployed on the S/4HANA, right? Additionally. Now, answering your, that is the first part of the answer. The second part of the answer is only the audit item, the auditable item, and the audit programs or the plans which you define are going to be different for internal audit and external audits, right? But the tool as such is one. So it's that's it. So the auditable item will be different.
The questions are actually pouring in. So
I know.
time is a constraint. So basically, what I think we should be doing is that we'll have detailed sessions and in future, seeing the interest, some more than 2,500 of our members from all across the globe logged in, and so I think we do not need any other verification that this is something which everybody really wants. So I can assure you, and Daya Bhai, who's been working on this already and has something up his sleeve, I'll straight away give it to him to tell you what it is and to give a formal vote of thanks also. Daya Bhai.
Thank you, Manu Bhai. It's I think Ramnathan is really justified. I think you will also agree. He is really justified. I think the time was short, but the kind of coverage you have done, Ramnathan, is superly fantastic. Friends, this is an experiment, rather we can say, from ICAI point of view, where we wanted to see the interest of people and whether we can actually reskill our members and give an opportunity for them to get into the GRC framework, control framework, or might be any kind of, as I was talking in the beginning, that either to act as a bridge between the company which is getting implemented and the SAP, which is a company which is actually doing a job, because there are multiple partners of SAP which have been doing a lot of activity. Number two, because that is again, you need not depend on a regular statutory audit, internal audit, tax audit, or this, that, and all other. If you are able to develop your capability in this particular area, just be assured that it's a barren land to run from one corner to another corner in a different style. And the kind of money what you make in this entire process is also something fantastic. Even if you think about one or two companies where you can do an implementation, it will be something fantastic to act as a bridge, because most of the organization are busy with their day-to-day affairs, and their day-to-day things are becoming very challenging. Number two is with regards to those people who are youngsters, rather than focusing on the regular traditional practices, rather you will move more faster than anything when you adopt this kind of newer technology where new things. And fortunately, the unfortunate part was COVID, but the fortunate part is the avenues which are going to come out of it is something unimaginable. So what we were thinking is, if this session goes well and we get feedback from all you guys, we can actually think about developing a kind of course on the entire SAP with regards to programming, or might be with regards to a audit approach and methodology, because ISA, which is Information System Audit, primarily talks about doing all systems audit. So this is just a start and experiencing this entire process. So if this goes well, I think if you have agreed, then we can really think about going forward and come out with a SAP certification course in the coming times. But that depends on all your interest as well. And Ramnathan, I think you have done a fantastic job to, I think, created the interest, and this video will be hosted on our institute site, so that people can visit this site and look into the entire discussion, listen to people, and listen to your speech, and might be get interested in this in a beautiful way. In 2 hours you have done your best to ensure that the interest has been created. And more importantly, Chairman Sir, thank you very much for agreeing to the new thought processes what we are trying to get into DAB. And most important part is with regards to the forensic audit as well as the system audit, the way you are looking into the technology part, you are looking into the kind of remote access mechanism we are talking about. In this product, SAP alone, how we can actually create a business opportunity, you have actually giving us a different kind of way forward. And more importantly, the entire DAP team, they have done a great job to coordinate and ensure that we reach out at time and complete this first session. And wait, watch, there is more coming. That's the only thing which I can say from DAB. We are going to be dynamic as the softwares are, technology is, and DAB is going to ensure. Just imagine 29,000 chartered accountants are qualified DISA, and close to 10,000 chartered accountants have qualified forensic. If we are able to train our people, the kind of exposure they are going to get. If you see from any large accounts which is getting into NPA or the fraud reportings are happening, where more or less bigger technology softwares are being implemented, this kind of technological advancement will take our members to a next level. A certified training under the entire DAB framework will give our members a better opportunity to take things forward. So, Chairman Sir, thank you very much for your time, your focus, and I am apologetic that because my system was down, you had to go for question answer session, which I should have been doing, but I don't have the second system to look into. So, for joining us, this new beginning of new sessions among all so many which has been created by DAB. So thank you, sir. Chairman, sir.
Thank you, Dayabai, and thank you, Ramnathanji. Thank you, and thanks to all the viewers from across the world. It's been a pleasure bringing this webinar to you, and with this success, we are sure to have many more in the near future. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for giving me an opportunity to share my knowledge and experience. It's my pleasure. I wish you all to be, staying safe. Stay safe. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu.
Thank you. Thank you.